So let me just use open my personal GPT for the explanation needed. So this was the chat we were using yesterday. We'll just continue in the same chat so that it can remember whatever we type on. So yeah. So yesterday we were. So I'll just give a summary of what we did yesterday. So yesterday we were adding the custom variables to the existing fresh variables. We converted the hashtag form into HSL form, and also we used few variables, like few more variables, customizable variables based on the requirements. So one more thing yesterday we had was the Figma. We'll just open it. Is anyone watching live? Nope. Cool. So yeah. So yesterday we were just checking this out and we extracted few colors. For example, this was a teal color. Yeah, this was a teal color, and the wordings we mentioned here, like the primary text is gray dark. So these are the references we used for the custom variable we were using yesterday. Let's continue to the next part, which is stylography. Mm, we'll do a plan today rather than studying and doing for complete 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I'm planning to do the today's plan is I will completely note down for like 15 minutes of whatever I understand in my own words. Then I'll implement the same and give an explanation of whatever I did. So that makes it more practical and it takes less time comparatively. And I'll also start the timer for today. So we could make it more easier for us.
Siri's dictation was driving me crazy, so I switched to Whisperflow. Here's why I'll never go back. First off,
on the Google Fonts. Check out our text styles. So in the design, I'm going to select the headline up here in the hero And in the right sidebar, it's telling us that in the typography panel, we're using Source Sans 3 as our font family, and then we have a font weight of bold. Then if we select the paragraph text underneath that, it's still Source Sans 3, except it is now regular font weight. So Source Sans 3 is a Google font, and I'm actually going to show you how to load this font locally instead of using Google Fonts embed code. Let me show you what I mean here. So we are on the Google Fonts website, loading Source Sans 3, and usually if you want to use this, you click the Get Font button, and then you can get the embed code. And what this does is it's going to load the font files from use this on the Google Fonts website, loading Source Sans 3. And usually if you want to use this, you click the Get Font button, and then you can get the embed code. And what this does is it's going to load the font files from Google and then also load CSS to load those fonts in your website. And this is not GDPR compliant because this way Google is going to be able to track the IP addresses of all of your website visitors when they load these resources from Google. So what we want to do is to load the font locally with actual font files. And unfortunately, we can't get the font files that we need from the Google Fonts site, but there is a really helpful tool that I like to use. So it's called Google Web Fonts Helper. And if you search for it, it should be this first result here. So to use Google Web Fonts Helper, what you want to do is search the website for the font family you want, Source Sans 3. And then down here, we can select the different font weights that we need. So by default, it's going to check the regular font weight, which is 400, which we do need. And then we also want to get bold, which is font weight 700. So if we keep scrolling down, they also give you the CSS code that you need to put into your website styles. And what it does is in this style, it's going to set a font face using the font family down to get bold, which is font weight 700. So if we keep scrolling down, they also give you the CSS code that you need to put into your website styles. And what it does is in this style, it's going to set a font face using the font family Source Sans 3. And it also is telling the website the path to the actual font file, which we can see here. It's going to default to a fonts subfolder. And for the pathing, they are using a 2-dot thing. And what that does is that will just go one level up from where you currently are. What I like to do with all my paths is I like starting just with a / because the / is going to load you in the project root. And then from there, we'll go to the fonts folder. So I'm going to use this. So let's now copy the CSS styles using the customized folder prefix. So I'm going to copy that, and let's go to our VS Code. Go to our styles. And I'm going to paste the font styles up the very top before everything else. This way, any style that come after are going to be able to load these fonts. Okay, so now let's go back to Google Web Fonts Helper, and we want to download the files. So we scroll down a little more. We can see here, we can download this zip file. So I'm going back to my Windows File Explorer, and in the Downloads folder, we have the zip file for the fonts. So I'm going to double click to open that. And then we have the two font files, one for regular font weight and one for bold. I'm going to copy them and then go back to our project folder, which is here. And because of the path, it is looking for that fonts folder. So let's create a new folder in our root called fonts. Then we'll go in there and paste in our font files. So now we have the font files and we have the CSS styles to load the font files. So next, what we want to do is we want to set Source Sans 3 to be our default font. So what I'm going to do is go to the top of our styles, maybe after the wildcard selectors, and I'm going to create a new selector for the body tag. And in the body tag, I want to set the font family to Source Sans 3. And again, if you need to get it, we can just copy it from there and paste it in. And whenever you're loading a custom font, you do want to make sure you have a fallback in case it doesn't load for some reason. So we can do that by adding a comma. And then I'm going to add Arial, and then we'll just use the autocomplete from VS Code to load Arial Helvetica Sans Serif. Okay, so now we have set Source Sans 3 as our font family. If you go back to our website, you might notice that it looks different from the way it did before. So let's just double check and make sure that the font is loading correctly. And in our Firefox DevTools, we can actually go to this Fonts tab here, and it's going to tell us that it's using Source Sans 3. Bold, wait for our H1 tag, and if I select the paragraph tag, it's loading the regular wait. Okay, so that should be all set now with our font family. Next, let's start looking at the different font sizes that we have in our Figma design and start putting those into our style rules.